I came across this week. It was a parenting seminar from the other side of the fence. In other words, it was secular. You could tell that by they had a Q&A session, and when people stood up and asked their questions, it was laced with profanity and expletives, so I didn't think this was probably a church thing. And the answer, and it wasn't. But a lady asked a question about her child, and about his terrible reactions to everything, the fact that he would just flailed out at everything they set for a boundary, and the business of if he didn't like something, he just hit his parents or throw himself on the floor or anything. And I think we were talking about a 12-year-old, etc. And the first answer from the seminar leader was, well, do you know when a boy's brain fully develops? She said no, and he said 28. I do not know if that's accurate or not. I'm not going to tell you it is or
it is.
Well, my wife said it's 79 almost. That's what Beverly would tell you. But anyway, and said, don't worry about that other. He's trying to find his boundaries. Well, we can accept the fact that kids do try to find the boundaries, right? And they need boundaries. And just don't worry about it. He'll find his boundaries. Now, what's wrong with that thinking? You better know something's a little bit off of that.
You need to help him find his boundaries.
Yeah. You establish the boundaries. You establish the boundaries, all right, for your children. And you don't wait till they are 28 years old, right? That's why you start early with very simple things to build boundaries around them, etc. that way. So I found that very interesting, and after I went in and threw up, I felt a lot better. He's looking for his boundaries. Throw yourself on the floor, and I'll find a boundary for you. Oh, before we start, all you people in green, and you don't know this yet, okay? That my clothes for Sunday are always laid out for me because I don't do a good job otherwise. I come in blue jeans and a sweatshirt. So they're always laid out for me. So can I teach them all?
You have a green feather.
That's that green feather. I learned that game right there. This little girl who was afraid I wouldn't wear green today brought me this. That's where this feather came from. May I proceed? All right. And I didn't think too much about it because I don't get into special days very much except Christmas when I get a new pair of socks. So I saw the green shirt today. And I have not said anything to Beverly, but I'm going to for a moment, so let's stop for a little bloodshed. How in the world could you put a green shirt on me today when we are playing Michigan State? I'd rather have Jim put one on. And that's how the divorce starts. Very good. Last week we spent a couple minutes on some of the questions that you turned in at the early classes when we first started this. And we only have one more week, next week. And we're going to tackle those rotten cell phones next week, so you better show up. All right? And as I said last week, if you weren't here last week, your questions were very good, but they're also very, very hard. They're very difficult that way. And so I got a few more on today, and I think in some cases I'm not even knowledgeable enough or qualified enough to answer some of your questions here. And so I appreciate them, and I apologize for not having great answers, but I'd like to give a little commentary, or a short commentary, on a few of them. And one of them asked, how can I keep my children's confidence in God and faith when they're going to have so much, they used the term bullying. My day, we just picked on people. So I suppose we bullied too. I know I did. And the question is, how can I build confidence or have my children have confidence in their faith when if in certain surroundings they're going to stand up for it, they're going to be oppressed for it? Good question. Good question. Probably in the early things of teaching kids about their faith and what it is, what should you also bring in? In this world you will have, what's the word in your different versions? Trials, tribulations, trouble. Man is born unto trouble. Man is born unto trouble. And that's just any man, all men. That's saved and unsaved. But for the believers, Scripture has taught us that there will be difficulty in our life. And Scripture is full of examples of those who suffered for their faith. And so I wouldn't with the child build a glorious gold castle that, you know, every time they speak for Jesus or for their faith, that all will be well. It won't be. But have them think beyond the world they live in, who will be pleased by that, who will use what they are saying, and going to have to get a little backbone themselves, a little broad shoulders, because, you know, to live for Jesus is not the norm. To speak for Jesus is not the norm, but it is the correct way. And so you use Scripture and you can show them very clearly what God wants to speak. And of course you always want to teach them that, first of all, their life should speak for Jesus before their words. Who was it? St. Francis of Assisi always said, always speak the gospel, preach the gospel, and if necessary, use words. Use words. And so that would be my little reaction to that. That's not a great answer. None of these are any good this morning that way. How can we help our kids not to see church and Bible classes as a chore or boring? And the first thing I put down is, well, I wonder if the parents feel like it's a chore and boring. You set the atmosphere for church. I mean, of course, it's best to set the atmosphere from birth. You know, if it's something you come into later in life, it is going to be difficult for a child who does not have any background in that. It's going to be very, very difficult. And I would say this is a soapbox straight from Larry, so let it go as soon as I say it. God did not give you children to keep you home from church. You know, God did not give you children to keep you home from church. First Sunday after birth, we put ours in church. Once in a while we'd say, no, you can't hold them. We don't want you to breathe on them. Give us a couple weeks, then you can hold them. But God didn't bring, you know, and I know families have to adjust to new schedules and all of those things, but the church will fit nicely into a schedule if you make it. It's a lot of work. We always had in our home, I am just, I shouldn't say this in front of you. You'll think I don't like any of you. Tardiness is just anathema to me. Okay, I got it from my dad. And I don't take that personally, okay? Because we have never started this class on time and never will, because you guys are always starting. But I love you anyway. So then all of a sudden, you know, we have 5 kids. 4 of them were girls and 1 bathroom. Which in those days only meant 1 mirror, except what you might hold in your hand. So, you know, everybody knew, you know, whatever it took. You get up earlier, you do something. But Mike and I, the one boy and I, we took on the kitchen detail that morning. And the deal was, we do the kitchen and you are never late. You are never late that way. So, you know, you set the atmosphere for what your children think about church. Starts with us. I keep saying you, and that's not fair. It starts with us. What do we think of it? What kind of a commentary do we make when we go home to church? Do we have fried preacher every Sunday for dinner because, you know, we didn't like the sermon or something he said in the sermon or this or that and the other thing? What kind of commentaries about church and church leaders and church personnel and church friends are being made in the home? How positive is the church atmosphere developed at home? You know what I mean? You understand that? Now, you know, it may through a lot of circumstances, you have blended families and everything else, and some children then are exposed to church much, not much. Some children are exposed to church where they have had very little exposure before. And not understanding God's Word very much, probably is a little boring. You know, probably is a little boring. So make sure that you pick a church where there is relevant things being taught for your young people that they identify with and create a little interest in there, and a little burden falls on you. And I know I'm hurrying, but we got some other things to do this morning too. How do you address problems that arise from traumatic incidences that happened in early childhood development? That is an excellent question. I'll tell you flat out right now, Larry's the poorest person in the world to to address that one that way. You have to do that. If you get into the extent where you have to use some counseling, I would never go to any counselor that was not a Christian. I would never go to any counselor that didn't have the Bible. I would recommend one who sits in the back far corner today, who finally made it home from Chicago, because Adam has a good background in problems of childhood development, and he has a great grounding in the Word of God. And so if you have to go to that route, because these folks are trained on how to talk and I say dig in a complimentary way to that with that child. When you have something that's really extreme that way, it'll probably be a little bit beyond your capability. It would be beyond mine. But if you ever get into the counseling realm for a family or church, unless it's based on the Word of God, you are throwing your money down the drain. It's got to be that, because only what's on the Word of God is going to work that way. Okay. Did they live? Medical emergency, did they live? The best advice for raising children that have become aggressive. And I got a little hung up on become, what was happening before, you know. Read the signs on your children early in life, you know. I don't know, and again, I don't know the age of the child here, but to find out why has this happened. Now, when you get these children that have these bad habits, and even the bad backgrounds, and even the traumatic events, and sometimes with the special needs child, you cannot automatically create that scenario that everything is okay because they have this problem. And next week I have to make some commentary about education too. And education is kind of stuck with what to do with problem children, and so the only way they go is special programs. Had a grandson who, because of his mother's hyperactivity, I think, his attention span was about an inch long. And I said, Renee, stop and look. She's was a little flighty in those days and really likes to talk. Because youngest of 4, and she didn't get to talk till the last one left home. So, and she hasn't quit since. All right, but I said, you look at Brandon. And I said, look at this and this and this and this. If you don't straighten out and get on those things, we both knew there's nothing wrong with him. I mean, I said, in 1 week in school, they will label him and they'll track him into a low program. This kid is sharp as can be, and turned out. But she did correct the problem. So, you know, what's the best advice for raising children to become aggressive? Of course, this may go without saying, start young so they don't become aggressive, you know, that way. But if you see those signs, you're going to have to dig into them and find out. But aggressiveness is a wrong. Aggressiveness is a sin. Like if you have a child who's angry, that's a sin. And so go that route to dig into it. Children from a neglected and abusive background. And again, you are going to have to pour out a lot of love and understanding for this. Talk to the Greens. I sent one person who was a visitor here who had a problem like that. And I said, you go talk to Marquise and Charisse. And they got some help set. They have been through it. Just like there's resources. But you're going to have to pour out an extra amount of love and understanding for that child just to build up their security, that they're okay, that they're secure with you, and they're not going to get tossed out again that way. But again, come on in. Again, their misbehavior cannot be overlooked just because they have this problem. You may have to scale down and not go as fast as you did with some of your children who didn't face these things. But you still must train and discipline. And here's an attitude. What I do about an attitude of disrespect as a teenager. Pick them up on the floor after you deal with it. Now that's old school, Larry, so just let that go, etc. Disrespect at any level is totally unacceptable. Teenagers especially aggravating, because you do kind of want to let them have one. But you must realize that, you know, you don't make an excuse for them. That is wrong, and you deal with it. Now, if you're dealing with a teenager, you got probably not talking about spanking them, but there are consequences. That's why I wrote this up here this morning. If it is wrong, it has to have consequences. And you must never fail to realize that you hold all the trump cards. You are the parents. You are the parents. And you can figure out what the consequences are. And there are plenty of things you can think of that they like that you can withdraw from them, and that will hurt enough to eventually get their attention so that you can work more closely with them. As they grow older, should we continue family devotions or move to individual devotions? Yes. My only comment about devotions, and especially if your table devotions include your children, obviously, not your personal ones, including your children, is that you gear it to them and not to you. Okay? You can handle your deeper level study on your own. But with your children, you got to make something that's relevant to their life. For instance, with Prince, he wouldn't have known any of the Bible stories. And so, while all the other three girls knew them because they've been placed in a church atmosphere, for training Prince, they had to drop all the way back to 0 that way. And so, if you have family devotions together, I would definitely gear it to the children's age level and things that are relevant to them. Well, could I teach them serious things about it? Yeah, but you just start with one little block at a time. One little block at a time. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I should just real fast, because we are going through this with Genesis, not in our home anymore, and then Prince's level. So recently we just started with the ESV scripture journals, and answer basic questions: who, what, when, where, why, and memorize the scripture if you like. And then what we do with Genesis is we get together on Sundays and we video her or we Skype with her and just discuss those. It doesn't take any longer than like 15 minutes, but that can address everyone on every level, and it's both individual during the week and we come together on Sundays to do it as a family.
Yeah, this isn't directed at my parents, because it really didn't happen with my parents, but being with others, even on vacations and everything, but had to have those family devotions even on vacations. And it was so far over my head I could have cared less. Hurry up, I want to go fishing. Hurry up, I want to get back in the lake. Hurry up, I want to do this. But I definitely don't want to be listening to this. All right, and so the relevancy of where the kids are at. Now, your personal devotions, you approach it different as an adult. You can take the deeper that you need on your own that way. So we got about 8 or 9 more questions to answer next Sunday. Next Sunday, please come about 8 o'clock so we can get done on the last day. We can do that. We're going to head back to where we were finished last week. We're going to head back that way this morning. But before we do, I want to go with another little topic that I just want to spend a few minutes on for you, and that is dating. That is dating. Now, Chris and Katrina, are you ready for that child who hasn't yet arrived to be dating? No? Colton?
Definitely not.
No. Are you ready for it, Chad? Nope. And your daughter is 16. Tucker's up here saying, "Come on, Larry, give me a low age. I want to go." Those girls are cute out there. Girls are cute, boys are ugly. Yeah, Chad.
I got an idea, but it's probably not the right idea.
Yeah, I'm sure. Go ahead, sir. Oh, you got an idea? Oh, yeah, I thought you were going to expound. Last week we said this is a decision you make in your home of what your dating age is going to be for your children. I'm not going to give you one because they're not my kids. I had to establish one. But one thing about this age, and part of this is in your notes here, these are some things I put in your notes when it talks about preparing for dating, is to have ahead of time an established age that you are going to allow your children to date. And so this is the way not to do it, okay? So we have children, and they're 4 or 5 years old, and one night I get this brilliant idea. I said, "Oh my gosh, I got 4 daughters. I'm going to want to date someday." Which didn't turn out that way because I was always a principal or something like that, and nobody That's what the girls told me. Nobody's going to ask us out, Dad. They're afraid of you. I said, that is very good. That's just the way I want to keep it. That way. But so we decide, you know, on an age. It was 16 at our house. We decided on an age. So you forget it. Okay, can't date till you're 16. Kids ask, what did I date? 16. Boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden they're 16. And they said, Jimmy asked me to go, you know, da-da-da, Friday night. I got a date with Jimmy. And they aren't asking you, they're telling you. Well, you're in a dilemma. You know, Jimmy, I heard that name. Yeah, Jimmy. And all of a sudden, you know, any boy that asks your daughter out is instantly a mad gorilla. Okay? You know, they're not worthy, which is probably true. All right? So between setting that age and that 16, there is some work to do, Mom and Dad. There is some work to do. There needs to be preparation for dating. And I just want to mention a few things about that this morning. You think of, but set your age. Set your age. Now you got homework, Chris. Set the age here when the little one gets here and everything else. But then, of course, those first 5 years, you're not going to have to spend much time on this, but a little conversation with Mama to get you on the same page and everything with this is begin some preparation. Because if your child is going to date, if you allow them to date, and that's pretty normal, I would say you should and would, they need to know a few things, right? I mean, if they're going to date successfully and not end up doing the wrong thing on their dates, they need to know. They can't just jump into this. Now, is any 16-year-old mature enough to get into a semi-serious relationship? And you all shake your heads, and neither were we. And neither were we. Okay, so don't go off half-cocked, lose your head. And it's, you know, neither were we, and neither are they. But there is a time in the social order that they do need to move out that way. The sub-motive is that they move out. Period. Right? Out the door. Okay. And so when you set the age, whatever God leads you to, that'd be a good way to find it, right? What God would lead you to, then accept the fact that you have some responsibilities for your daughters and your sons to prepare them for that date. Now, I haven't dated in a long time. I have dates with Beverly, but they're a little bit different than the ones we had in high school. And in our little farm town, you know, little milk cow town in the middle of Michigan, dates only involved going to a ball game and then taking your girlfriend home and maybe getting something to eat. But my girlfriend lived on a farm and their refrigerator was full, and I thought, why should I spend money on her when I can really dig out there free that way? So, you know, in a cow town, what are you going to do? You know, there's no family movies, there's no activities, there's milk the cows and go to the Friday night ball game. And so, way over half of the dates we had in 4.5 years probably involved going home from a ball game. And as she and her best friend, because me and my best friend always took her and her best friend, we all dated, and they said, boy, sure got to pray for a win because it is no fun when you guys lose. All it is no words, and I won't tell you how fast, because there were no speed limits in those days, so we weren't sinning. We were just living stupidly. Fast as we could, and good night, nice to see you, blah, blah, blah. Not much of a date then, because we were still upset that we lost the ball game. Dating is, there are a few more opportunities to do things now that way. So, preparing for that dating, let's just mention a couple things, because I got to pick on Tucker down the road eventually, and I don't answer that way. Consider this. I'm going to give you a consider this. Consider this. When your child, and let's start with the daughters, won't pick on the girls overly. When your daughters are asked for a date, consider this, that if she comes home and says, Jimmy Jones has asked me out to da-da-da, that when, so she train her ahead of time so that when Jimmy Jones asks her out, your daughter can say to Jimmy Jones, you need to ask my father. Not my parents, not my mom, my Father, okay? If you have a son, you train him. If you have a son, you train him so that if there's a girl you want to take out, you know you need to contact that father and say, I would like to take your daughter to thus and so. You know, be prepared to give some answers to some questions, okay? Consider. So there's 2 blanks on that one below age are parental consent. I didn't know what good words fit there, but train them so they know. So parents, you don't want to drop your kids into the dating pool with no help, no preparation, and no involvement on your part. You are very responsible for what's going to happen. All right? So you train them that parent would, or that girl would involve this set of parents, and that young man would engage another set of parents. Because when Jimmy Jones comes and says, I want to date your daughter, she asks Jim, I want to date your daughter, Jim will say, hey, let's sit down and talk. And the kid will probably faint dead on the floor. All right? Sit down and talk. You going to send your daughter out with somebody you don't even know? What kind of a background does he have? What kind of a home does he have? What kind of a spiritual background does he have? What are his intents? This would even include, okay, adult contact, not bad, not much, but this would even include a father saying, do you intend to touch my daughter? You could also ask him if he understood what a eunuch was too. But I wouldn't recommend that question. Dad will explain that later. All right. You better handle it. I got confidence in you. But you see where I'm at on this? Don't these precious daughters, don't drop them out in what might be a cesspool you don't even know. And it might be a really neat thing. In both cases, you need to know. Yes, ma'am?
I was going to say, you have to do it too earlier than you think. You have to do it early and often, so that the daughter or the son is invested in what you're having to say also. Because you can say to them, we want you to do this, but they have to buy into it as well, which is why you have to do it early and often.
That's what I'm trying to build, but you're saying it a lot better than I am. Between establishing the age and it actually happened, a lot of preparation. Because when little princess gets to be about 10 years old, she will have thoughts of dating. She will have. And that's your opportunity. And if she doesn't give you the opportunity, you take it anyway because you're the parent. You say, you know, someday I'm going to date. Let's talk about a couple things, simply, you build. And daddy takes his son and says, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We had done more before than this, because this is an illustration of something a little bit late. But when we moved from LaGrange back to Michigan in the late 1970s, my son was trapped with me for, you know, in a U-Haul truck and a 100-pound German Shepherd for about 3 days. And I had taken a job at a school, and I visited that school. It was a Christian school. And visited that church, and I thought, whoa, that place is loaded with cute girls. We better review some things. So that poor kid took it for 3 days in a row. So I knew where we were headed that way. But this is the point, and then she makes it better than me. It's not just setting the age, and then you're ready. You aren't ready. You just got your target. You got your target. Now you got to start figuring out how to get the target. So I just want to throw this out. Everybody doesn't do it, and I can't tell you that we did it either that way. But if you really want to start building some safeguards, parental involvement might have been a better word than consent now that I think about it, but involvement, you should. One of our twins lives in California, and she was probably at least 20 years old, 20, 21 at the time. She said, and she'd been dating Greg for quite a while. They were both about seniors in college, so it might have been before 20 years old too. She said, Greg is going to talk to you tonight, Dad. Well, this was beyond dating, you know, dating. And I said, okay. Of course, I mean, the families were friends. We went to the same church, so all of it was okay. You know, I was going to say yes, and I wanted him to hurry up and ask me. I wanted him as a son-in-law, and he's been worth every inch of it. And so she said, Greg is going to talk to you tonight. He has a question he wants to ask you. And I said, yeah, I kind of could figure out what that might be. So he came over that night, and he stayed, and he stayed, and it got later and later, and I'm like going, oh. Finally, I just said, well, you guys, it's been good to see you. I'm going to bed. Mr. Campbell, Mr. I got to talk to you a minute. Thank you, Greg. Thought you'd never get to it. So we went outside and talked that way. And of course, he obviously asked me if he could marry my daughter. And I said, well, Greg, we'd be honored to have you. He said, well, I must tell you that in earthly things, finance or anything, he said, I don't have anything. And I said to him, I about blew him away. I said to him, I said, that's good. I don't want you to have anything. He looked at me like, what planet did this guy? I said, Greg, I'd rather you not start off everything, because number one, I know about your work ethic. Your work ethic is so strong, I am not worried about you taking care of our daughter and providing for her. But more important, I want you to know down the road someday, you will have something, and you will know it came from God. Because he's a real strong believer. So I said, I'm really happy you don't have anything. I don't want you to stay that way forever. But starting from the ground up is good. What that has to do with anything, I don't know. But we're building in here. So we got this age, the involvement of parents, parental consent, parental preparation. Here's a tough one. But as you prepare your sons and your daughters, you need to cover the subject as it's apropos to the maturation and development of your child, of the sacredness of the body. You need to have conversations with your daughters and your sons. Not just a birds and bees, not just a birds and bees conversation, where do babies come from. You need to talk about, because you are trying to establish Christian home, you need to talk about the sacredness of the body. If I were Jim, and I were sitting with Tucker doing this, all right, and try to cover this subject with him, sure it's awkward, but if you start early with little tidbits, it becomes a little later than wait until the night before the date, and oh, we got to talk. That ain't going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. But if you're a fella, you can go to 1 Corinthians 7, and in this case, I like the KJV a little bit better than ESV. The ESV says it's not right or good to commit sexual immorality with a woman. KJV, and this I like this better because of the age appropriate to get the point over to a son. It's better if a man doesn't touch a woman. The touch factor. And so, you know, as you get into parental preparation for dating, especially in the culture we live in, which is a sex-saturated culture, you know, where I'm sure it's below college, any college boy who dates a girl, we're just talking about the whole general context, expects that on a date. It's just expected. It's the norm. And way too often gets it, all right? It's that way. But that's not where you're at. And that's not where you want to go. You don't want to become a grandma or grandpa before your time. And it does happen. We know that. And we're not throwing rocks at whom it does. We've had it in our family, etc. But the preparation includes the physical aspect of that, but not just talking about the practical foundation of sex. It's the practical foundation of what God says about the body and the sacredness of the body. And you need to impress on your sons and your daughters. You know, don't give it away. Save it. Save it. Now, that's just like going against the flow, you know. If Tessa gets in a conversation down at UNC about that with the norm in her dorm, I didn't mean to go, but you know, they would think she is the weirdest person. Nobody does that. But she could say, yeah, I know one. And I know more than one. So you. That has to be. Don't shy away from that. That has to be part of the preparation. And I'm not just talking about, I talk about sex, etc., and where it fits and everything else. That has to be there too. But the sacredness of the body, what it means, what it says. You should teach your sons and daughters. It's totally out the window nowadays, and I'm just going to say it in line. Respect for the opposite sex. Respect for the opposite sex. Okay? And I'm not gonna go any farther than that because it's too time consuming that way.
Help us fill in the blanks.
All right, A was age, B was parental consent. We kind of decided maybe involvement was a better one. C was where we talked about parental preparation. 1 is the privacy of the body, save it. 2 is respect for the opposite sex. 3 is, oh, you'll love this one, Dad goes shopping. Guys like to be around Rosa, but you have a daughter, and she gets to the age of puberty and development. Dad ought to be on every shopping trip for clothes.
That's a hard one. It's good. I still love to go shopping.
I can say it now, my kids are gone. I don't have to live on it. I'm just laying it on poor old Jim over there, that way.
He does a good job.
Now, why do I say that?
I don't shop. John does.
Well, we're in, you got me. Why do we say that? Clothes are a big issue with kids, and I don't blame them. You know, if I had to do it over again, I'd get some cool clothes too, but I'm stuck with a green shirt on Michigan State. Dads know how males think. And dads know when she tries that on and you look at it, dads will say, So I say, when your daughters hit puberty, Dad better see all the clothes that are going on your daughter. Got it? You got that, Mrs. Campbell? That was 3, Dad goes shopping. I was very interested, and the next one is called a no-touch zone. That, you know Dennis and Barbara Rainey? Dennis and Barbara Rainey, I'm sure you would, from Family Life, etc., and all their marriage seminars. That, they had 6 kids, I think. And I think they had a couple that were adopted in there. But in their preparation for their sons and daughters, and especially their daughters, they had a no-touch zone that they described on the body. Now they just described the one that was okay to touch, so you know they didn't have to get off on the other side of embarrassing things for kids. But they agreed on a no-touch zone for their daughters, and that would be something when they were asked if one of those daughters could be dated, that they could cover with that young man. Do you know? In our house, we have a no-touch zone. You start the question, do you intend to touch my daughter? And that'll rock him back 40 years right there to the average teenager nowadays. If some dad says, do you intend to touch my daughter? That'll send up all kinds of flags and everything. But the girls do ahead of time and have developed it over a long period of time. But I was surprised, I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I was surprised it was a little more lenient than I thought it would. But maybe it has something to do with the way I think as a man. Of what's a vital or a vulnerable spot. But a no-touch zone, they developed that. And you can develop it with a son or a daughter. You know, you're going to hold her hands, fine. You know, but there's some practical things that I want you to think about, because you will face dating, but face it prepared or a little bit prepared. D is on that no-touch zone. It's where I put down 1 Corinthians 7, verse 1. Was that business it's not good for a man to touch a woman. 1 Corinthians 7:1. All right? Dating. I just, 3 things here I'll put down. Group, double, alone. Group, double, alone. It's nice to start your children out in kind of a group date. You know, where a bunch of kids just get together. I love these pictures of proms where kids who are really not into the dating scene, but they get a date for the prom. And there are about 6 boys and 6 girls, and they all go over to somebody's house first, and they just start taking these masses of pictures that show up on your Facebook account and everything else. And then they all go, and they all got a reservation somewhere afterwards to go get something to eat after the prom or whatever. They do this together. Wow, group dating to begin with, is just very, very safe. It's very good. It doesn't take away your responsibility to know who's in that group. You know, you don't want to clunker in there anywhere. But if there's a, excuse me, the old saying, safety in numbers, well, group dating, that's a good way to start, you know. And again, talk your kids into that, because I want to go out with him, man. I don't want to go out with them. That will be your mentality of your child if you don't do any preparation. But group, double is good. Double is good. I'll say this very carefully. Very few pregnancies have occurred in the back seat of a car when there are two spectators in the front seat. There's safety again in doubles, and a lot of fun. Like I said, we did it all the time. Her best friend, my best friend, well, they were in the band together. We were in every sport together. We did everything together. And you know, we never got in trouble, nor never got tempted beyond reason on a double date. Just never happened. And then you'll have to prepare them for alone, because alone is different story, different context, different mentality that way. All right? Dating alone may bring up the inappropriate question. The inappropriate question. Josh McDowell, in his book Why Wait, which is way back to 75, something like that. Why Wait? Talking about why waiting for physical activity. His answer was, according to the times, he'd say, when your daughter goes out on a date, make sure she's got a quarter in her pocket. So if the boy asks the inappropriate question, she just says, let me out at that payphone. And she drops the quarter and says, Dad, come and get me. All right? Anybody seen a payphone lately? One positive about cells, okay? Because a high school girl would generally have a cell now. And I like the updated answer. If the boy asks you to do the inappropriate thing, the girl whips out her cell phone and says, just a minute. Here's my dad, you ask him that, and if he says okay, we will. Right? Pretty good. Good answer. You ask my dad. If he says it's okay, you know, and she full well goes. Her dad has got his GPS tracking him, and he's got his 410 and his 45 and everything packed, and he's on the road already. So, yeah. He is moving on quickly. Moving quickly. He is, know where they are. Who cares if they think you're nosy? You're the parent. Deal with it. I'm so nice. I don't care. You don't have to be nice. You have to know where they're at. Well, where are you taking my daughter? Or where are you guys going this week? All right? Where are you going? We won't get into the should you check out, but you better have an idea of what you've agreed to is happening on the road. Curfews, I put down for curfews, be flexible. Have a set curfew for your children, but you have special activities which call for flexibility. So you may have an overall general one. I knew what my curfew, this is strange, I knew what my curfew was, and my mom and dad never told me what it was. I knew it was 11 o'clock. I knew that. I don't know how, but I knew that. Probably by trial and error that, you know. And I only came home late once. The old parsonage, where my dad was the pastor, the old parsonage. Dad's bedroom window was right there. He slept on this side. The driveway was right there. I tried everything. You shut the ignition off and coasted with the light. I came home one time, took my shoes off. I had coasted all the way in. I was significantly late. Took the shoes off, rode in the back door, stepped in the kitchen, and both of my parents were just standing there. Both of them. Once, but not twice. Once, not twice. Know where they are. Be flexible, all right? The inappropriate question was, ask Dad. Ask my dad. Okay, ask my dad. Now then, we left off last week on some things. Those were just some things I wanted to spark your thinking. God, go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, I don't want to
No.
too much time, but in thinking about all this dating, like all of our girls are really precious to me, but so are all of our boys. And sometimes I feel like the comfortable being Christian, being saved, saving themselves, and how do we interview girls for them? Because I care who those girls are, you know?
Same way Dad. Same way
So,
Dad does.
does it work that way?
Sure.
We get to do that.
It doesn't work that way often because parents don't have a backbone.
Okay. So if I just make it a thing.
You just do it. You just do it. I'm going to digress in that. I'm going to get to spanking because Tucker volunteered to take swats this morning, so I can tell you how to do it. Hang on to him so he doesn't run out of here. You remind me of something very important. What's the greatest deterrent you can set in place, other than not dating, you know, lock them in a closet for their life? What's the greatest deterrent you can set up for preventing a pregnancy by your daughter? Little girls, baby girls, toddler girls, preteens, teens. God created all to have a craving and a need for affection. Now, the world screws the word affection around to interpret it in sex, but for affection, what is the greatest deterrent to a daughter getting pregnant? Huh? That's right. The relationship with her dad. It is the dad's job, from little to big, to have an, now let me put quotation, affectionate relationship with the daughter. Now that's real easy when they're a little baby on your lap. When they go through puberty, you don't put them on your lap very often. I try to talk Beverly into sitting on my lap once in a while. All she's interested in is picking green feathers off my pants. No, just kidding. But the relationship of the dad to the daughter, it is the dad's job to fill that whole affection needs. Let's just choose 18 years for 18. He has to do it because that female is built for affection, and, sorry to say this, and she will find it the right way or the wrong way. Now let's set the girls off the hook. Moms and their relationships with their sons, extremely important again. Extremely important again. As she understands where he's headed, how he thinks. You can ask your husband, he'll tell you how men think. You know, it's kind of embarrassing to admit the truth sometimes, guys, but we do think that. We do think that. And so, I'll be right back. And so, mom has to have the relationship with the boy. So, mom may get stuck with the birds of bees talk with the daughters, and I may get stuck with the birds of bees talk with the son. But it's that opposite crosswind that is really going to build in. Because you satisfy their need for security and affection and everything by a strong daddy. And it is okay if every boy in the school fears your dad. It is good. Rock the boat and praise the Lord. Did you have a question?
A few years ago, Chan started taking the girls on daddy-daughter dates to phrase what that appropriate behavior should look like. And it set up a lot of great time to have conversations.
This daddy-daughter stuff that they do together is tremendous. Love it. I wish we'd have thought of it in our day. And mamas and sons can figure out some things too. Yeah, that way. See, I'll get there because of Tucker. All right. Good questions, though. Good questions. Don't be afraid. These are your offspring you're putting out there for those girls to date. You got to know who they're with. You have to know. You're inviting disaster if you don't that way. Last week we began to introduce and talked a little bit about spanking. They're going to go maybe 10 minutes, and I should quit. We didn't talk about a whole lot of punishments from the first go you give your child, and all the increments going up through. Remember I told you there are a lot of options for you. You have to find the one that works. Training to the right behavior will involve sometimes you determining the consequence. Now, what's the consequence for that first little toddler who takes his first steps and reach out to your good china porcelain, valuable, 39 cents worth of plaster of Paris turned into a $69 Hummel or something like that, you know? And you say, no. Well, the consequence is that voice and that no. They're learning disapproval. Wrong comes with disapproval, and that's something they got to remember. And then you go all the way up, and you go through the age where you may decide that corporal punishment is the thing you should do, and everything in between. We read verses out of Proverbs last week, and we read 15:10. It says punishment needs to be grievous. 29:15, the rod gives wisdom. 22:15, the rod of correction drives out foolishness. 13:24, spare the rod, spoil the child. The rod is for the back of fools. 26:13, beating, he won't die. I did not write the Bible. I did not write it. 23:14, the rod will save his soul from hell. And remember, our application was, if you beat your kid, he's not going to heaven. You know, you are working to break a self-will, and it's a self-will which resists God's invitation to salvation. And so you're breaking his self-will, not his spirit, his or her self-will. You are softening that heart for the day the Holy Spirit speaks to that child about their need of Christ, okay? And so let me give you 10 things. 10 things. And then I said, Tucker agreed to let me demonstrate on him today. Don't let him get away. Number 1, make sure the crime fits the punishment. Make sure the crime fits the punishment. Think through what you're going to do for consequences. But make sure it fits. You're not going to spank for ever offense. Your kid's backside won't endure it and your arm will fall off. There are that many offenses, you understand, in training little children. There are a lot of them. Now, are there things, I often get asked the question, are there things that just trigger automatic? We go right to the worst consequence. Are there things? And to me, I would say yes. And I wrote down these things. So one is, the crime fits the punishment, but disrespect, this is at our house, disrespect, lying, cheating, swearing, being dishonest, any form of back talk, direct disobedience, all drew the immediate worst punishment. Plus one other one, deceit. Deceit. And I capitalized that in my notes, deceit. All right. So you will have to determine if you decide to go this way of spanking with consequences. You have to decide what's an offense. But there are probably some automatics. Some automatics. There are some things happen you can't overlook. You deal with right then. So number 1 is make sure the crime fits the punishment. Number 2, the most important person in the spanking is not the one who needs to be corrected. Parent. Are you angry or are you controlled? Now remember, the incident your child did wrong ticks you off instantly. To a certain degree, right? Greater or lesser. It irks you. Or it might be so bad it makes you angry. Alright? Go to the spanking consequence and you're angry, you're off to a bad start. Inflicting your thinking on it. This has to be about correcting the child, not showing how out of control the parent could be. And so, this I remember way back when on one of the early notes I said, learn to count to 10 and do it by hundredths, 0.01. Count that way. It is okay. Now, sometimes for a little one, there has to be instant justice. Okay, for a little one. But as you get into an age where they understand that way, there's a time for you to just take your time. There's no hurry here. Besides, psychological, don't get me wrong, but psychological warfare is wonderful. When I was a principal in the school, I told you my first one, all I had was the discipline. 750 kids, and I had all the discipline problems. And my thing was always, when somebody was brought or sent, I just say, sit down there. About that tone of voice, sit down there. And I'd go back to work. I just go back to work for about 10, 15 minutes, they're sitting there. But 10 to 15 minutes, they're going like this. Finally one day, now I say this to my shame. Finally one day, this kid, by 10 minutes, he was crying. He was just crying, he was shaking. I didn't ask him what he did wrong yet. And he said, Mr. C, that's what I went by for all my life, Mr. C. Can I ask you a question? I said, yeah. In that tone of voice. He said, are you ever nice? And being young, arrogant, cocky, new administrator, I probably made the worst mistake of my life. I said, let me tell you something. I worked 32 years to get this way, and if you think I'm changing for you, you're nuts. You may condemn me for that. That was not right. It's very effective, but very effective, but it wasn't right. Time is on your side. The only the child gets if you're facing a major consequence. Time is on your side. Time is on your side. But the best thing about time is what it does for you. The child is scared out of their wits from the moment they realize they are going to get a heavy punishment. So you won't change that by time. That will stay the same, and that's okay. They need to know how wrong it was. Okay. That was, what?
Hurry up.
Why? The bathrooms don't work on this end, huh? You got all the way there. You ought to be 79 and they have the bathrooms out on this end. In the verses that we used, and last week I said, did you pick up a common denominator in those Proverbs verses? They all used an instrument. That's the word I like. They used an instrument. I said the extension of your hand. And I realized that 9-month-old might get popped on his diaper with your hand. Well, when you get into biblical spanking, you'll see there was an instrument. They didn't use their hand. This is an extension of you, and anything like that starts you down the road. I'm not saying you're beating. I'm not saying you're abusing, but it puts one foot on that driveway. It goes towards abuse that way with your hand. Once you get past that, you can pop them on the diaper and scare them, but not hurt them. Okay? They all used an instrument. Now, what's the best instrument? A lot of answers there. For the toddler, I have bought some of these for my granddaughters and told them they need to use them. And one did, got really nice results. Have you ever picked up a ping pong paddle? Very lightweight, very non-threatening, has enough edge to put a little sting on their bottom and do the trick. You know, don't go crazy with the instrument. You know, I was going to get a baseball bat and bring it here, sit in the corner, and bring Tucker up, but I'm afraid he would die of a heart attack that way. All right? They used an instrument. I believe, and we don't even have time, I believe that God gave one spot for a spanking. Notice in the Bible that a lot of it was the back. Well, it dropped down a foot. The little fatty cells that keep adding themselves all of our lives back there are good for something. I believe that's the only place you should strike a child. And I believe some of you may have grown up with a switch to the back of your legs or something. I understand that. That little sting will do it, won't it, Marquise? Yes, it will. That'll do the job. But an instrument and one spot. Now, Tucker, get up here and hurry up. I don't have much time. Get up here. Get up here. You remember your dad's younger than me, and he can kill me any day he wants to. So don't be afraid. You got him as a protector. Look at once upon a time, Tucker was a little boy. He was about that. That's all it was. It's too long ago to remember. Remember back to that anger thing? Sometimes that little child will go, don't do that. Do you know how fragile that arm, that shoulder, and everything is? None of that grabbing, none of that jerking. Does it hurt yet? I haven't accomplished anything. Consequences must hurt. You know, be careful. Now, the difference being a firm grip. A firm grip, that's different than a jerk or, you know, a grab or anything like that way. That's a fragile little body. And you're jerking it around and you're an adult, mature, with some muscles, some developed. You go on a date and you start lifting. This is my man. But be careful, thanks. I'll bring you back up in a minute for the swats. But careful of that grabbing and jerking. Those are little bodies. Firm grip. Years ago, we could take hold of a child in school. I had a paddle in school, I used it, it was very effective and everything else. But rather than take a hold of some kids in the hall, I loved on the boys to get the hold of the back of their shirt. And they'd start hollering, "You're hurting me." I said, "Haven't touched you. When I touch you, I'll hurt you." You know, that way. I'm not recommending you carry your kids around, but a firm grip is okay. Be careful about that jerking and grabbing and everything with a little child. Little one, you scoop them up in your arms and go take care of business, whatever. But be careful of that. Don't grab, jerk, don't whap them. I believe it's very important that, and I hate to say this, it makes me just sound like some barbaric human being. I believe it's best you develop a position for your child to be in when you spank them. My dad didn't do that, and I always put my hands back on my work. That's a wonder I even got hands. You can put a child, and like I say, I hate to say it, between your legs and have him bend over so there's just his bottom exposed, and this hand will hold his arms or her arms, and you can take care of business that way. Don't just start wailing away again. You're putting one foot back towards that abuse side again. Don't do that if you're spanking that way. A position. 7 is in private. The day and age we live in now, in private. Had a buddy at the church I went to in Illinois for 25 years, and he was an ex-Marine drill sergeant. And believe me, his kids had told the lie because he didn't change much once he busted out that way. And he was at a store once, and one of them acted up, and he just boom-o. And then when he did that, it was a boom-o. And there was a lady in the aisle, just petrified, just glaring at him and everything. And he says, "Go ahead, lady, call the DCF. See if I care. I work for them." He did. He did work for DCF. He didn't care that way. Don't do that nowadays. We've told our kids, our grandkids, if you're going to spank, you get alone, you get in private. Raises too many questions. You have to deal with it. 8, you'll think it's crazy. You got just a little bit of time to cry over the pain on your bottom, and you have to stop crying. You kid, it goes on and on and on and on, wailing after they get spanked and needs another one for the wailing they did. Hey, don't be looking at Chad back there. She's wanting to wail at Chad. No,
That's what your dad said.
stop the crying. Stop the crying. Most important part, get them back on your lap or by your side with your arms around them. When they're old enough to understand, it's beyond that, no, stop that to that 1-year-old, they get to be a little bit of reasoning. They have to know 2 things. They have to know what they did wrong, and that brought this offense. But most important, they need to spend some time with you, just holding each other and telling each other you love them. You love them. That is extremely important. And then I would suggest to you, after you get things settled down, that you just pray together. But make sure you let them know you love them that way. You're off the hook. Thanks, Tucker. You're a good guy. It's a hard subject. It's not a popular subject nowadays at all. Personally, you do not have to do anything I ever suggest to you. I believe it's biblical. Huh?
Do they know what the stupid question is?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Bev. Beverly said, do they know what the stupid question is? It's when your wife says, what is that green thing on the back of your pants? No, the 4 things at the bottom, other than the things that draw immediate, spanking is a last choice punishment, except for a major offense that you decide. It's for when lesser punishments have not worked, okay? Do it early, often, and firmly, and you'll have it done mostly by the time they finish school. I only had to paddle 1 child.
Begin school. Finish school.
I have a good twist on you. When they finish school, when they begin school, you know, that way. I only spanked one of the children when they were older. It was a son, and he did one of the most stupid things boys can do, and he totally put his life at risk. And it's fortunate he didn't get killed. And for that, he did, and that was probably hard. Oh, I cried so hard after that. I don't know how long he cried, but I know I cried a long time. I thought, how could a kid do something so stupid? Well, they do. You've all been there. Stupid things they do. Do it early, do it often, and you should have. We spanked early, we spanked hard, and we didn't have to spank very much. We really didn't. 4 girls, 1 boy. Who had the least spankings? The boy. The boy. He did. I don't know why. Because he was mommy's boy. When Mikey comes home, we get all the best recipes, you know, something you haven't had in 20 years, you get it. Mikey comes home now. We can have homemade, even homemade donuts if Mikey comes home. That's what the 4 girls. Oh yeah, must be Mike's coming, huh? See, we're in yesterday. Kim, do you have a question or?
Oh, that's next time.
Okay, all right. Don't ask the stupid question. What's the stupid question? Do you want a spanking? And if the kid says yes, you have not done your job. Because every child should say, no way, don't ask a stupid question. But even more important is the last one, I think. Don't make empty threats. When we get home, you are going to get a spanking. And then it doesn't happen. And your word as a parent is da-da, da-da, no good. I put one on here you don't have. Don't dump it on your spouse. When your dad gets home, he's going to knock you into next month. No, sorry. Nobody's off the hook. Parenting is together. If you have to go punish excessively, Mom, do it. You have to learn to do it that way. Next week, oh man, like I say, come about 8, bring some sandwiches for lunch. So we're going to talk about electronics and a few other things. Get out of here. You guys are just awesome. Thank you.